You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Okay, well, the start of another year, and to celebrate the start of another year, we've got new blood. We've got fresh blood in the water. So the assembled gathering here, Ivan has texted 15 times and said that don't be too shocked and disappointed, but he can't make it this week. He's on furlough down at Queenscliff. I don't know what in the hell he's doing. He's just been on furlough over in the Middle East. But he insisted that he couldn't come in, and could we get by without him? So all the best to you, Ivan. Sue Stanley, OAM, is here with us, and I hope that's pissed off the person who said stop calling her OAM. So we'll be doing that continually. And we've got Richard Wollstonecroft, who is he's the Muff Man. Muff being an acronym. I won't explain what Muff means, I will. Melbourne Underground Film Festival, he's the Muff Man. Dick is the Muff Man. But the new blood in the room is an eminent physician. He's a
carpenter.
No, fuck me.
Like Jesus.
What did I say he was? An orthopaedic surgeon, and Don had retired him because he said he had the shakes, which I'm staggered that the doctor didn't sue him for that, because it was a tongue-in-cheek offering by Don. But he is in the studio with us. He's quite a correspondent with us, and he gives us good tips and good information. And he is Barney McCusker from Mount Gambier. So welcome, Barney.
Thank you very much for having me, Sam. It's very, very kind. I've been turning up to your shows for a quarter of a century. I do have an ability to make you cranky at these shows. I hope that's not today. I hope I've improved. But we'll see, because I've got a few questions without notice, but we'll get to them.
Well, good on you, Doc. Well, if you can end up making me cranky, you'll be doing well. Well, it wouldn't be hard, to be honest. So just before we start then, we'll just do the shout-outs, just because Doc Fordham, Dr. Ben Fordham, MD, Lord Fordham, well done, Lord Fauntleroy. He says, never do the shout-outs first. They're not important. Do them at the end of the show. People are only tuning in to listen to what we might have an opinion about. So as the doc's not here and can't shout at us, we had to shout out to a woman called Janet. You told me, Janet, Sue Stanley, OAM. She came, we can't remember who she is or where she is or where we met her or I met her.
You always say, I'm going to give you a shout out, but he goes, oh, I must write it down. And then he's forgotten to write it down. And I remembered Janet, but I can't remember the other half that he actually did.
At our age, you write everything down.
Well, that's all right, Doc, but if you're just out and about and you haven't got a pad on hand. Anyhow, Janet, you will know who you are. Good on you, Dale. And then Damien Burke, who was an ex-Geelong footballer, very good footballer, and went up to play for the Greater West Sydney, an excellent exponent of ruckwork. He said that George Kazimatis, he's a partner in a law firm. I'm not sure if he'd like us to mention the law firm. The law firm might say, what the hell's George listening to this shit for? But he's from Gallant Law, or Gallant.
Gallant Law.
Is
that right?
Gallant Law. And he listens to the podcast, and so does his daughter, Lauren.
Wow.
So I'm sending a shout out to George and Lauren and Janet and Michael Christian, menswear.com, who was just in here, made a guest appearance last week, and God, weren't we so lucky that Michael Christian came in and gave us the benefit of his repartee, and fantastic. And he's back now in Tasmania, but he says he hasn't got any shout-outs today, but there's only 11 caps left with Don Scott's signature on them.
And no more coming.
No more coming, because Don's not coming.
He's put his pen away.
He's put everything away. And so these have become, and we don't hear much from Kate Save these days, but Be Fit Food, we are still a great devotee of Be Fit Food. So we're sending a shout out to all those people, and well done to everyone. Now, I don't know, you might want to be involved in a lot of this, Doc. It might do your reputation. But could I just say this for a start? Say you were a fuckwit. And say you were the ABC. But I repeat myself.
Yep.
What is wrong with that station? Did you
Everything.
see the disgraceful depiction of New Year's Eve with that indigenous crap they carried on with? How many times do they have to be told we've had the yes and no vote, resoundingly beaten the yes vote? They go on with absolute nonsense. They have delusions of adequacy, that station. We pay for that station, and the crap they carry on with, they are so arrogant and smug and pompous that they think they're relevant about what they portray and what they spew out about what's going on the planet. I don't know how many times the public have to tell them that we're not interested in watching on New Year's Eve Indigenous dancers belittle the day, saying it's what is wrong with them? But besides, anyhow, that we'll just
Well, Sam,
I'll tell you. I'll just say this about them. This is William Allen White. William Allen White said this, and I remember this, as you can see, I'm not reading it. And I've said this before, and this could have been written about the ABC. With pig's eyes that never look up, a pig's snout that only knows muck, a pig's brain that only knows the sty, and a pig's squeal that only cries when it's hurt, they sometimes open their pig's mouth, turked and ugly, and let out the voice of God, railing at the whitewash that covers the manure about their habitat. William Allen White said that about someone, and he could have said it about the ABC. They are a completely irrelevant organisation that spew out shit about this great country we live in and try to divide it at every turn. And if you're part of the ABC, you are a fuckwit.
Yep.
Well, I can't comment on any of that because
No.
my wife and I were well and truly in bed, asleep, looking at the back of our eyelids at that hour of the night. So I don't know what happened.
Well, they had a preliminary fireworks display, but before the fireworks display, they'd already degraded the country that they live in by having some indigenous song or indigenous dance performed by second-rate actors and second-rate performers. But I notice but it's all turning. A lot of councils and a lot of organisations are now pushing back on the Welcome to Country, saying it is completely irrelevant. It's not disrespectful. It is just not relevant. We are one country, and I notice a group called the Emily James Trio has brought out a very, very catchy song called "Don't Welcome Me to My Own Country." Very nice song. People are starting to push back on this. We're just all one nation, and wait till the 26th comes up, Australia Day, and of course Settlement Day, and wait for all the people to come out of the woodwork, all the AFL clubs who said it's a disgrace and we've overtaken and overrun. Everyone on this planet, everyone in this state, everyone in this country wouldn't be where we are today if someone hadn't sailed up a river and finally made this country what it is today, because there was nothing here before it. And we hope everyone who was here before us and everyone who's come since are all one people, and stop telling us we are a divided nation, because we're not. And if you keep pushing it, you'll just show how anachronistic you are.
See, what I'd say about the ABC is I'm a Scotsman, and it costs each one of us 12 cents a day, and I want to get some value for money. I look on the ABC as a recalcitrant child that I'm not going to give up on, and I want to continually improve it. It is very frustrating. For example, if you watch the ABC like Insiders, what you will see every week is you will see the same small cohort of people from Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra. When they took the show to Tasmania a couple of years ago, they took all three panellists from the mainland. They could not find one panellist in Tasmania who could speak and give us a perspective from Tasmania. So there are bits of the ABC, that are very good, like Landline and things like that. But there are also bits of the ABC that could improve. And as I said, I don't want to give up on the ABC. It's costing me money. I want to improve them.
It's become vastly politicised in the last...
Totally.
I mean, it was always, in the 80s, it was still a little bit political leaning to the left. But, it's become so much more so that it's become a kind of an engine of propaganda for, like, this kind of, like, new woke, which is not this woke politics, this identity politics and all this stuff is not particularly popular with people. I'd say it's only popular with 20% of the population, but they push it onto everybody as a kind of cultural engineering exercise. And you got to say, why, Sam?
The cringe-worthiness of it is that they are arrogant enough to think they're relevant. And they're not, they're an irrelevant little clique of people who push out this nonsense and think that they're virtuous enough in their own little echo chamber, and no one gives a crap about them. Oh, we give a crap about them because it's so obviously twisted down to suit a particular agenda.
That's right. It comes out of Ultimo. There are 4,500 journalists around Australia for the ABC. The vast majority of them are actually good, decent people who you can have a conversation with. But it comes out of Ultimo, and if you don't... and they'll tell you, if it doesn't come out of Ultimo, it doesn't matter. So really, Ultimo has to change. And the other... I mean, a year or so ago, they wanted to move Ultimo, I think it was 26 k's up the road to wherever, and they had to get external people in to convince the staff at Ultimo that they needed to move. I mean, basically what you do with that situation is you get the desk, you move it up there and say, that's your job, and if you don't want it, there's going to be someone else at your desk. I mean, the Ultimo really needs to look at itself. I mean, if you look at Ultimo and take, for example, they do... they look at them and say, who do you vote for? Anonymously, and 40% of the people at Ultimo in one survey were Green voters. Now, the population of Green voters in Australia is about 10%, 9 to 10%. But when 40% of Ultimo is Green voters, then that is an imbalance.
And there's not a single show on the ABC that's conservative, not a single one.
No.
I mean, couldn't they just have one? You know what I mean? Because every other show is like, left-leaning. Every other news and politics. They couldn't have one conservative show?
If you look at, and I look at them both, all right?
Yeah.
I read all the papers.
SBS is the same too.
If you look at them both, I look at Sky, I look at ABC, so two ends of this parameter. Yep. On Sky, for example, when we were talking about The Voice, you had Joe Hildebrand and you had Chris Kenny, who were for the yes vote, and you had others who were for the no vote. There was a balanced discussion. On the ABC, no, that wasn't there.
Yeah, they would never have Sam on Q&A, for example, Have you been on Q&A before?
No.
The Drum?
No.
Insiders?
Ever had an invitation?
No.
No. Along with Janet Albrechtsen. She hasn't been on for years. Now, that's someone who could do them a world of good if they had her on, but they won't have her on.
They keep the Overton window, which is like the kind of spectrum of conversation, to a very, thin minimum. Go ahead, Sam.
Righto, we've given them a kicking. Now, so just on a lighter note, Doc, I know you've got some very, very nicely come prepared, because the person who used to sit in that chair came with fuck all for 4 years. But anyhow, you've come, just first of all, did you make, because I only asked this question for a reason, did you make a New Year's resolution? What is a New Year's resolution?
I'd never make New Year's resolutions.
Because
the one thing I would like to happen this year is to get Don back in this seat around the table.
But that's not, that's
out of my
a
control.
wish or a hope is not, hoping, a New Year's resolution, I hope I win Tatsloto, that is not a New Year's resolution. A wish and a hope is not a New Year's resolution. It's something that you're going to apply. I'm not speaking to you specifically. It's something that someone applies themselves specifically to do with their own life or attitude. That's a New Year's resolution. So have you got one?
No.
Do you want to be a more moderate and sensible person, or do you want to be a more careful driver? Or
I'll continue taking the advice of my wife, who is a very, very sensible woman.
Is that a resolution? That's a resolution?
No, that's a yearly resolution.
Every year. That's an hourly resolution.
I've done that for the last 42 years, and it's always worked.
Yeah, that's
it's always
right.
worked. In fact, my wife and I have, we separate what the choices are. I mean, I make all the little decisions, she makes all the little decisions, like whether we buy a new house or a new car or a fur coat. And I make all the really big decisions pertaining to the McCusker family, whether we make peace with China, war with Russia, whatever. And that has always worked for 40-odd years. And that's the resolution.
Someone said you had a full set of Encyclopedia Britannica, but you sold them the day you got married because your wife had everything she could, every bit of information.
She's a wonderful woman.
What?
She's a wonderful woman.
I'll take your word for it, Doc. I've not met her. Now, Dick.
Yes.
Thank you, Dick. Did you have a New Year's resolution? So the doc is being guided by the missus. What about you?
Yes, I make New Year's resolutions sometimes, and I often wonder how long it takes for me to break them. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's a week.
But that's the point.
Yes.
Well, what would be one that you?
Oh, to get a bit healthier, you know what I mean? To exercise more, lose weight, do things like this.
That can be a resolution.
Yeah. I often have resolutions along those lines, because, I was quite a thin guy when I was in my 20s, and now I'm in my early 50s. And, my diet's basically stayed the same, but my metabolism has clearly changed, so,
I won't ask you about your diet, Doc, at the minute. You've had.
I've trained off a bit.
You've had a big summer.
Yeah, it's all muscle.
Yeah. So
I'm a swimming.
So I got a feeling that you weren't a New Year's Eve reveller, as I wasn't, and I don't know about Sue Stanley OAM, but I was in bed, didn't even wake up for the fireworks. So I don't know what Sue was doing. But I was asked to go to I did have something on prior to it, so I couldn't go. But the Dick here from the Muff, he had a big. Was it a hellfire? What was it? You had a big shindig going on, Dick.
It was, a party in South Yarra in this guy's big kind of house, Carl Howell. He's got this big kind of mansion.
Carl, yeah.
And you've probably met him. And, he has a big party. It's a
Frank
kind of
there.
Great Gatsby. Frank Housen was there.
The Great Gatsby.
A whole bunch of people. Dominic Barbuta, and if you know him.
How many were there, Dick? And what happened? Were there analgesics involved?
Oh, there were all kinds of things. Glenn Waterston was there. He used to work at Heat. Do you remember the two Glens who ran Heat?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So he was there, and it was a big party. They have it's kind of a Great Gatsby kind of thing. They have a band, they have a staff, free drinks all night, so everyone got drunk.
Free drinks. Who paid for the gig then?
Carl.
Did he put it on?
He put the whole thing on.
Shit.
So everyone ends up in the pool.
There was a water feature. We always wonder who's going to fall into the water feature, But some people were going out to the tennis court, and it was
Did you
kind
have
of
to
a
book
big.
for the toilets?
Take a number, I think. Yes, that's always the best thing.
Did anyone get turned over up in top of the top in some of the top rooms in the beds or anything?
Well, look, I think they do have someone keeping an eye on the place because it's quite a big place. But I think everybody was mostly well behaved. I've been to this party a few times.
Mostly well behaved. That's like that old euphemism in the States when they said they're mostly peaceful demonstrations.
Mostly peaceful. But
when they're burning down half the city and people are shooting the coppers and driving cars into crowds. Mostly peaceful demonstrations.
I'm still sort of recovering from it 2 days later, so let's just say that is the case.
All right. Well, so that was that, Doc. Now, did you notice? Tell me about this. You'll know this, seeing as you're a medical man. Can a person, not mine, but the generally accepted theory is that a leopard never changes its spots; they only get bigger or smaller. I noticed a gentleman called Abdul Nasser Barinka. He says he's a changed man. He wanted to bomb the MCG crowd. And they incarcerated him, and he's been let out, and he said, "No, I'm a changed man." Is it possible? So you'd take his word for it, wouldn't you? He would say that, wouldn't he, if you were released?
He would say that, as Mandy Rice-Jones once said. He would. Mandy Rice-Jones said that too.
That's right.
He would say that. I believe in people. I believe in redemption. I was brought up a Christian. I believe in redemption. I believe in giving people a second chance. But I also believe in monitoring them. And if he's a changed man, then we also need to give him a chance, but monitor him. Whether that is true or not, we will see.
Why can't we just deport these people? You know what I mean? It's so obviously hostile to our nation and country.
It depends if he's an Australian citizen.
Yes, that
and
should be right.
We have a constitution which we had a vote a few months ago not to change, and we stick very much by that constitution.
Would he? Well, that's right. If he's an Australian citizen, Mr.
We have to deal with our own problems.
I heard she said Mandy Rice-Davies. Mandy Rice-Davies. Not a lot of people would remember Christine Keeler and Mandy Rice-Davies, who I think upended John Profumo.
Profumo, that's right.
He was tampering around with their breastal areas and their minge.
They were sharing with a Russian diplomat.
That's right, they were. And I can remember this. This came out in one of the glossy men's magazines. They had a picture of Christine Keeler sitting with her legs astride a chair with nothing on, but the back of the chair covered up the minge. And then the next week, Mandy Rice-Davies was in a chair in a pair of brief bikinis, but she had her legs astride, but you could see her groin, but of course it was covered by, and we thought the impression that Christine Keeler was sitting there with nothing on, with her legs apart, but hidden by the back of the chair, was pretty exciting. But it was much more exciting when you could see actually the groin, but it was covered by the bikinis.
I never saw the second shot. Everyone saw the Christine Keeler shot.
Yes, no, she wanted to top, if you could pardon the expression, she wanted to top Christine, so she came out with the more explicit, which I thought it was more explicit because, anyhow, that was just by the way. And now,
Is it question time?
You go ahead. We've got 100 things to speak about.
He'll probably regret this, but it might be question time.
Go ahead.
Now this podcast goes out to 70,000 people a week.
Well, we take Podbean's
Yep.
Is it Podbean, Susan?
It is, Podbean goes on.
Podbean.
It goes on to all platforms.
So there's a lot of people who take your advice, not only because of your elderly wisdom. Can you tell the people out there, 70,000, when they're looking at securing their house, is there a particular security screen that they could put on the front door which you would recommend? I'm thinking in particular a security screen that was plumber proof, because there was a time in your life where you came across a security screen that was not plumber proof, and Susan OAM is looking at me rather quizzically and thinking, what the hell is he talking about?
Yeah, no,
As is Richard. I think Sam, you might need to fill out that story.
Yeah, no, thank you, Doc. Yes, no, this is well.
That's a Dorothy Dixer.
This is well documented. I was inside.
He's already done it.
I was inside with. Well, I was a heterosexual. Still am. So I had a woman inside my house many years ago. Many years ago. And unbeknownst to me, she happened to be the girlfriend of a bloke who broke into my through the doors of my house, Mick Hamill. I'd been down the front of my house. I'd had a couple of drinks. I'd had a lot of drinks. In fact, I was fly blown, and I was sitting down the front of my house, having exercised the option with the girl, and we were having the obligatory cigarette after it. Except I had a drink instead of a cigarette. And there was a loud crash on the door, and the woman said, "Don't answer it." And I thought, why wouldn't I answer it? It's my house. So I staggered up to the front door, and I opened the door. And luckily, I have one of those security doors, which has wire and mesh and bars and shit and locks on it. And I was about to say, this bloke said, Mick Hamill. He said, "Is Cheryl there?" And I said, I remember thinking to myself, that's her name, is it? And I was about to say, in as coherently as I could, because I was absolutely fucked. And I was about to say, "Did you want to speak to Cheryl?" And he punched me through the security door. He did. He broke my nose. I had it riding side saddle for under one of my ears. And as I fell to the ground, now. You won't believe this, but this is true. As I fell to the ground, I thought, if I survive this, I'll get in touch with that security company. What's the point of having a security door that someone can punch you through? So I didn't have any. Didn't have any camera or anything, and if I had, I wouldn't have been able to, because I couldn't even focus on it. Anyhow, that ended up me being taken to the Epworth Hospital at 4 a.m. and having a complete face reconstruction. And I've always said I've had surgery to get my nose back in front of my eyes for a start. And so to cut a long story short, Doc, I didn't have any camera installed in my house, and had I had a camera, I probably would have still opened the door, because I didn't realise that the girl I was with was the partner of the bloke who had knocked on the door.
So the question is, when you took a young lady back to her house late afterwards, in the years afterwards, did you always check out the security screen and to see if it was of a suitable nature, or if it wasn't, you'd say, "Sorry, honey, must be going"? You know, did this affect your delivery?
Doc, I know this is going to sound a bit basic, but in the end, I gave my member. I actually gave it a name, because I didn't want most of my decisions being made by someone who I wasn't wasn't introduced to. So my cock ended up being my guiding.
What did you call him? What did you call him?
I call him Frank. Because most of my decisions were made by my dick in those days,
Frank
so I
really.
didn't worry about. I thought,
Most of your decisions,
I thought there was a chance I could actually get into this house and upend whoever it was, man, woman, or beast. Security cameras were the least of my concern.
So in the years to come, going on from the security, when you were walking across the street and you saw a little dim sim on wheels, as Frank Bullpit used to talk about it, Fred Bullpit, and you saw it stop and the reversing lights come on, did that ever sort of give you flashbacks? Because there was a nasty incident where you saw the reversing lights come back, and you ended up at the Epworth again that night too. Although you found a yard.
Now, Doc, I am. This is another true story, but I'm adverse or averse. Am I adverse or adverse?
Adverse, yeah.
Averse, I think is the word. I'm averse to speaking about this because the person who was involved in backing over me doesn't like me recounting the tale doesn't like me recounting the story because
I was not aware of that. We could move on.
No, I don't know why she minds me recounting the story because it's all against me, not against her. But it's a bit of a family matter involved, and it reflects. It doesn't reflect well on one of the other people involved in it. So I'm happy. But suffice to say, I was backed over by someone, and it did scare me while I was lying on the road and saw the reverse lights go on in the car. And I did vault out of the way as the car sped past me, and I went to the hospital again. So I've had a lot of injuries.
Once again, a broken bone.
To answer your question, though, he's very jumpy and very nervous when he does hear those reverse.
I think he's getting flashbacks, and I think this is something Lord Fordham needs to explore. He might even have you on the couch and relive some of these.
I think the psychologist would have a real difficult time with him because there's many more deeper issues.
I think Lord Fordham will probably just say to him, Sam, stop drinking red cordial.
No, so
this isn't a cross-examination.
No, so well done, Doc. So there's two things. That's quite true. Now,
go ahead.
I don't know if you got anything you want to say, but we've got 100 things here.
Yes.
So I notice, I don't have an opinion about this. We get. So the the road toll is up. Right, deaths on the road.
Terrible.
But it is. But how ineffective are the campaigns to keep the road toll down because they concentrate on the wrong things. Stopping people driving, having a speed limit at 30k through suburbs and having speed cameras here and honestly, if you policed people on drugs or drinking while they drive, that's all right, have the breathalyzers. People on the phone, after that, you cannot stop people speeding. I noticed a kid who was 21 was found doing 160 in an 80 zone. How could you legislate for that? And
I have an opinion on that.
Good.
I've been an orthopaedic surgeon in Mount Gambier for 38 years, and in that time, some of the patients that I get are the hoons, and also the byproduct of their hooning, the innocent victims. Now, I can tell you, I've seen inside the mind of these hoon drivers, and I've seen what's between their ears. And I'll tell you what's between their ears, a perfect vacuum. Nothing is between their ears. The only thing they hold dear in life, the one thing they hold dear in life is their car. Not their family, not their girlfriend, certainly not the victim of their hoon driving. The one thing they have is their car. And I've actually said this to the Minister for Police in South Australia, and I think he took it on board. I said, the one thing you can actually get to them is to actually, I'm talking about the recidivist driver, not the young kid who makes one mistake and is regretful for it. I'm talking the guy with a bad record. we need to give our courts, in Victoria too, need to give the police and our courts the power to say, you are a recidivist driver, you are not improving, we are going to not only confiscate your car, your very expensive hooned up vehicle, but we are going to make it a requirement of this court that you attend this facility at 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon and watch your car being crushed in public in front of you. And you can have as many of those cars crushed until your driving improves.
It's extreme from you, Doc.
It is very extreme. And I tell you, I said that to the Minister of Police in Victoria here, when she thought I was actually a Victorian voter, and until she found out, she turned on her heels and left. But she thought that was extreme too.
Yeah, so
but I don't think it is.
So let's accept that. So why browbeat the rest of the public into ridiculous speed limits in city areas and out in the country? Yeah. It's the people that's the 1% of the people who do all these ridiculous things.
Right. How do you legislate?
And so how do you legislate? And
against idiots. I mean, that's what appears to be the case.
They haven't done what I'm proposing them to do because they think it's too severe, too fascist. You know, I don't think it's fascist at all. I think it's there's a small simple
group of drivers, and everyone else pays for it too, because then they want to bring in 30 or whatever. The majority of drivers are fine, but every now and then you'll just see a complete idiot scream past you, and you go, this is why there are accidents.
People who drive the trucks are a disgrace. They drive those trucks as though they're sedans, and they intimidate people.
Some of them are real bullies.
No, they are. So why don't they crack down on people like that? And I know you'll say this is xenophobic, but it's not. But the new arrivals that come to this country who basically can't speak a hell of a lot of English and have probably driven on the wrong side of the road over where they've come from, seriously, that they cause more. We said this and got accused of being racist but the RACV brought this out about the deaths and the accidents on the Great Ocean Road. They said the majority of them were caused by, and they said, I think they actually said that the majority of them were caused by Chinese tourists going down the Great Ocean Road who had no idea how to drive, had never driven on that side of the road, and people said, that is racial profiling. It was just a fact.
It wasn't racial profiling, it's just a fact.
It's a fact.
It's a sad fact.
And so, I don't know how so if you get a licence or you get a permit to do it, or if you have an overseas licence and it's transposed over here and you can use it over here, but just nailing people for doing 45 in a 40 zone, and
I know. Look,
seriously,
no system is perfect. You just got to keep trying.
Yeah, and you have to accept a certain level of, there's always going to be accidents, you know what I mean? And there are accidents in every country of the world. And, whether the laws are draconian or whether they're completely lax. Because you go to some foreign countries and there are practically no laws at all. Like in Thailand or whatever, you can drive around practically doing whatever speed you like just about anywhere. But there are some accidents
They just do the numbers of increasing of how many deaths on the road, but they also don't explain the amount of cars that are on the road, because there's so many more cars on the road now that if you do the percentage ratio, it's actually less people are dying on the roads as we speak.
I mean, when I drive on the road, I shouldn't say it, my wife is shocked when I say I drive like an old Sheila, but I drive very defensively, and I assume that everyone else coming up that road is under alcohol influence, under drugs, is a moron, etc., is wanting to kill themselves, and I drive extremely defensively, and I think that's what we've got to do.
My old man always said,
like an old Sheila, Doctor.
Yeah, the old Sheilas
unfortunate choice of words.
Will be really
like
offended
an old
by
bozo you drive like.
Driving Miss Daisy.
My old man always said you've got to drive the other cars around you, in the sense that you should be aware of, what people are doing. Like, obviously you're heading in one direction, but you can just tell. Sometimes a car will just be, and then you give them distance and you look at the people behind you, they can also be coming up in a ridiculous way. I mean, as best you can't see everything. Now,
I have actually got a question here without notice actually for Susan OAM.
Ooh.
And she will have an opinion on this because, I mean, she is a great athlete, See, I'm a little offended by beach volleyball for women, where they absolutely insist. Beach volleyball for men is the Olympics. They can wear whatever they like, shorts, whatever. Whereas beach volleyball for women, they have to wear a bikini bottom with the side no wider than, I think it's about 2 centimetres. Mm-hmm. The last time I checked. I personally look at them and I say these people are athletes and they should be allowed to wear whatever they want to wear when they're performing their athletics, not by the rules, so they have to wear a bikini bottom. Susan OAM, what do you think about that?
Is that your opinion? You don't like seeing these women in
No, it's not
bikinis?
that.
Is that a requirement? If you're a beach volleyball girl, woman, you must wear a bikini.
So you're complaining about their skimpy outfits.
Is that a requirement of the sport?
The last time I checked, that was a requirement of the sport.
Really?
But not for men. Men can wear what they want.
Yes, I know.
Whereas women have to wear a bikini bottom. Now,
what do you think that's
hopefully
the
they
reason
haven't
for that, Doc?
I have no
It's such
idea.
a boring sport, no one would watch it unless they're looking at people's asses and tits.
Well, that's right.
It has been a sport that for some reason has attracted me for some reason.
Yeah, I still think it's offensive to insist that these women, they've singled out the women, have to wear this. They don't treat them as athletes. They're saying you have to wear a bikini bottom because it's beach volleyball.
It's probably good for the ratings, mate. So
that's what it's all about.
Sex sells, Doc.
Yep. That's right.
Well, let me tell you.
Well, what do you think?
Well, let me tell you, when I was competing, we used to have pretty much, wouldn't even been a 2-inch bikini on the side, so we were pretty skimpy.
Did you have to wear that?
No, it was just what we all did, I
That's
suppose.
what you chose to
That's
wear.
what we all chose to wear. It was sort of the thing that it was.
You don't want
and it was
any
always on
fabric
TV.
restricting you in your movement.
Absolutely,
you wouldn't
yes,
want
yes.
big baggy shorts while you're trying to do what you do.
Well, when it rides up, it just stays there, so it doesn't matter what size it is. But
How delightful.
but it was always on TV, and the sport grew and everything. Then they tried to make it into a real sport, which gymnastics then took it out, and then they made you not be able to wear a 2-piece or show skin. They made you cover up, and then you couldn't have it above the hip line of your pants, so show your legs, and then it was no longer seen on TV. So what destroyed the sport? Whereas today you don't really hear about it because they tried to make it into a real sport and think that girls have to cover up, whereas we're in the skimpiest of outfits, but it had so much publicity. So by the end of the day, I think sex sells, and sometimes in the sports when they're growing,
It's not necessarily sad. You can look at it on the positive side. I don't think I'm going to complain about skimpy women's outfits.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to treat them not as women but as athletes, and that's all I'm saying.
Well, you have to have a team uniform, I suppose. Like if you have like the hockey roos, and if you all had skirts, then what happens if you don't want to wear a skirt? And so it's just so hard to please everyone, I suppose. So get over it, I reckon.
Doc, who do you think you're fooling, mate? Yeah, I know it's a great subject to talk about. You love watching the women play beach volleyball, and you wouldn't watch it unless if they became had any more substantial gear on. You wouldn't watch it at all. You only watch it to see I
believe I would.
Anyway, I'll have to ask Natalie Cook and Kerry Pothurst, who are the Olympic champions there. I'll have to get a comment from them.
Yeah, get a comment from them.
Do you think that in itself is an Olympic sport, beach volleyball?
Absolutely.
Right, good, well done.
I think they're great athletes.
Are they?
Now, you did mention that the 26th of January is coming up, Australia Day.
Yeah.
See, and we've got over here Susan OAM.
Yeah.
Personally, I think she's been OAM for long enough. I think she needs an upgrade. I think she should be Susan AO or OA. AM and ultimately AC, so that eventually in a couple of years' time you're going to have to refer to her as Susan OAM, OA, AO, AM, AC.
Yeah, and her name is Suzanne Michelle Stanley, so she's SMS. SMS AO.
That's an acronym.
And
SMS is not an acronym. An acronym is only something you can pronounce.
SMS.
Smiths.
It's a test.
No, it's Smiths. That's not an acronym.
And ultimately, I would like to see her Susan Michelle Stanley, Governor of Victoria. I think
settle, pedal. Jesus, you're elevating me to the Relax, man.
Aim high.
I only just met you. Come on.
Baroness. Stand there.
Baroness.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't be
Dame.
bigger than a Lord. Lord Fordham.
No, you can't be Lord, but the equivalent is Baroness.
Baroness.
You'd
Isn't
have to have an operation with Lord Fordham, but that's all right.
I'm not sure that you do have to have an operation,
Do you?
which is an interesting thing you bring up, Doc. I see
You just feel like it.
some of the states, some of the states in America, now this is a new law coming in, that gender-neutral toys, it is mandatory to have gender-neutral toys in the larger department stores coming this year, and also restrooms that are regularly used by students, by boys and girls, must have tampons and pads available for either the boys or the girls.
Crazy.
That's the new law coming in some of the states in America, that if you are a boy or a girl and you use the same restrooms, you must accommodate for both genders by having tampons, saying that if you're a boy and you're transitioning or pretending you're a girl, you must have tampons and pads available.
And they're only catching up with the French. The French have had unisex bathrooms for decades.
No, this is not unisex bathrooms. This is not about unisex.
Oh.
This is about, no, that's...
Transgender.
This
We're
is
excluded.
transgender. Hmm?
The transgender
You and I would
industrial
be
complex.
excluded.
This is about transgender
Politics.
politics, saying that if you're a male pretending you're a woman or vice versa, you must have the choice of having tampons or pads in your bathroom. And it says between boys and girls, and it says between the grades of 4 to 12. 4 to 12, you must have pads and tampons available for both sexes if you
But
choose.
people don't menstruate before 12. What the hell do they need that
Well,
stuff?
that I've just got that off. That is what the new laws in some of the states are. Doc,
Look, my wife is American.
is she?
Yeah, she is.
Oh.
She came from New York.
We won't hold that against her.
No, she's I love Americans. It's an interesting country. I fear for them. I think the worst thing that could happen, and I'm really treading on very dangerous ground here, the worst thing that could happen is when we come to the next election, we could have Sleepy Joe going up against Trump, and I know you love Trump. I think, I just can't imagine what is America doing? They're 300 million, and they've got a guy in his late 70s up against a guy in his early 80s. I mean, surely they have two people from opposite sides of politics who could actually be up against each other. And I just look at that and I go, what on earth are they thinking?
Well, who would be stronger internationally than Trump?
Mm-hmm.
Nikki Haley.
Would be
but she's
so she'd belt. She would get Putin and Zelensky together. She would get Kim Jong-il from North Korea together and say, "Stop firing rockets at us." She would belt Iran and say, "If you touch one of our soldiers, you won't know what's hit you." She would do all that, would she? Because that's what Trump did, and not one serviceman was killed under Trump's watch while he was the President of the United States.
I think she's tough enough to do that. The one thing she would do, and I know that you would disagree with this, she would not walk away from the Ukraine. And I think it's very important for the West, America, Europe. It's mainly European war. There's 760 million Europeans, and it's really their war. It's a pity that America, 300 million, have to do the heavy lifting along with
Why
Britain.
are they doing the heavy lifting?
I mean,
Because
what's the point
they-
of fighting, there? I mean,
Yes,
when
what
it's
is
obviously
the
a war they
point of
can't win.
sending
They can
billions
win
of
it.
dollars worth of...
Can't win it. I mean, it's basically a NATO provocation against Russia.
I don't think we should allow Russia to walk into a sovereign country and take it over. Because if they
but
do that, they're going to do it
Russia
again
was
and again.
promised at the end of when the Berlin Wall came down, it was promised that NATO would not move further towards its border. And it's moved so close, that obviously they want Ukraine to join it. And that was a kind of deal breaker for them, because it's basically to do with Russian security. And also there's a lot of ethnic Russians were living in, is it the Western Ukraine?
Yeah, the Donbass.
Yeah, the Donbass and places
Yeah.
like this. So, Putin constantly said, and there was a coup in 2014 where a whole bunch of globalists, like this, Newland woman who was like, part of the, Obama regime. She went in there. They overthrow the kind of pro-Russian Ukrainian leader and installed, a virulently anti-Russian. Basically, in a coup in 2014, and then they've been, basically pushing for war with Russia ever since. And as soon as the pandemic ended, it started.
I don't believe the majority of Ukrainians want to be Russians.
And what kind of person burns their country to the ground to rule over the ashes? I think it was Confucius that said that was just pure evil. I mean, what's going to be left of the Ukraine?
It's the Russians who are burning that to the ground.
Now, boys.
Yes.
What we're doing is, with the people who listen to this, we think have an attention span of not much further than what we're doing. But we're coming back with, these are some of the things that we're coming back with from my point of view, and Doc, you've got plenty of them. We're coming back with, we believe that the climate is being altered deliberately by seeding storms.
Cloud seeding.
It's cloud seeding. We believe this. It's not... the Grand Prix, they're starting to erect the stands now. Why don't they just leave most of them up for the whole year? Mm-hmm. Land tax, people are getting over the land tax levy down on the coast, down in the upper echelon areas by planting olive trees and becoming hobby farmers to escape the land tax. Yeah, I know you don't believe that, but that's a fact. We're coming back with a whole lot of different things about what makes this planet go round. I notice Sally Cap is refusing to give the money back that she's been driven around in the limousine. Why wouldn't you get on public transport? Because it's free in the city.
Your public transport here is fabulous.
Yes.
I'm a South Australian, and your public transport is the one thing would almost have made me vote for Daniel Andrews. Not quite, but your public transport is fabulous. And I'm a senior, and I go everywhere in Victoria for $4.60 all day. I could ride the rails all day for $4.60. Well done, Victorian
and the pilot
government.
in the helicopter that crashed and killed a few people up in Sydney had cocaine
traces.
Traces of.
They don't think it was significant enough. Cocaine stays in your body for several days, and you can pick it up on the nanometers for traces. Right. But probably
so
didn't
you
affect.
Think that's a bit of a furphy there?
Well, the forensic guy who's been talking about that has already said, yes, we suspected the trace there through the spectroscope, but it's not significant enough to
impair his judgment.
To have caused the accident.
Yes, well, that's good then.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you cleared that up because that sounded as though he was high on
coke
while he's flying the plane.
But I've got a lot to say about land tax, I'll tell you. I've got a lot to say about land tax when you come back.
Right, well, we're coming back, and so that's it. Well done. So here we go.